What if I told you that Germany had a warplane so versatile it could replace an entire fleet? A bomber, a fighter, a reconnaissance aircraft? How did the Junkers Ju-88 master it all? Welcome to Historical Digs, where we explore the untold stories of history's greatest machines. One day, it's a dive bomber. The next, a night fighter or a high-speed reconnaissance aircraft. Multi-role planes became even more valuable on aircraft carriers, where space was tight, and powerful twin-engine fighter bombers like the P-38 Lightning and the de Havilland Mosquito proved that adaptability was possible. But in World War II, one aircraft stood above the rest as the ultimate multi-role machine, a Warbird that evolved beyond its time, proving its worth across every front. A plane that, even by war's end, was nearly a decade old but still unmatched in its versatility. The birth of the Ju-88. In the 1930s, Germany was rapidly rebuilding its military under the Nazi regime, preparing for a conflict that seemed inevitable. The Luftwaffe, Germany's air force, sought to revolutionize its bombing strategy. Traditional bombers were heavily armored but slow, making them vulnerable to enemy fighters. Instead of relying on brute force, German military planners envisioned a different kind of bomber that could outrun its enemies rather than withstand their attacks. Before we dig deeper into the multi-role Junkers Ju-88, hit that like button and subscribe to Historical Digs. Your support helps us bring untold stories from history back to life. This idea became known as the Schnell bomber or fast bomber concept. The theory was simple: a bomber so fast that it wouldn't need excessive defensive weaponry because enemy fighters wouldn't be able to catch it. This thinking aligned with Germany's strategy of fast, decisive warfare, Blitzkrieg, which relied on speed and precision rather than prolonged engagements. If the Luftwaffe could deploy a bomber that could strike quickly and retreat before enemy defenses responded, it would give them a significant edge in combat. In 1935, the German Air Ministry required a high-speed bomber to bring this vision to life. Several aircraft manufacturers submitted designs, but Junkers Flugzeug und Motorenwerke AG stood out. The Ju-88 was conceived as a twin-engine aircraft with a streamlined fuselage and advanced aerodynamics to maximize speed. Engineers aimed for a top speed of around 500 kilometers per hour or 310 miles per hour, significantly faster than most contemporary bombers. Unlike other bombers built for a single role, the Ju-88 could serve as a dive bomber, reconnaissance plane, night fighter, and torpedo bomber. This flexibility made it one of the most ambitious aircraft projects of its time. The Luftwaffe wanted the aircraft to perform near-vertical dives to improve bombing accuracy, much like the famous Junkers Ju-87 Stuka. However, the Ju-88's higher speed and larger size made these dives dangerous, causing extreme stress on the airframe. During test flights, early prototypes experienced structural failures, with wings and fuselages cracking under pressure. Engineers had to reinforce key areas of the aircraft. Despite these early struggles, the Warbird gradually evolved into a formidable aircraft. Junkers engineers refined the design, strengthening its structure and improving its handling. By the time the war broke out in 1939, the Ju-88 was ready to prove its worth on the battlefield. It wouldn't be long before this multi-role aircraft became one of the most feared and versatile warbirds of World War II. But how did it go from a troubled prototype to dominating the skies? The growing pains and refinements. When the first Ju-88 prototype took to the skies, it was clear that the aircraft had enormous potential. However, translating that potential into a combat-ready machine proved to be a far greater challenge. One major problem was structural integrity. The Ju-88 was designed for high-speed bombing missions, but its frame initially lacked the durability needed for the intense pressures of combat. The aircraft's lightweight construction, while beneficial for speed, resulted in stability issues and weak points in the fuselage and wings. Test flights revealed that the airframe was prone to stress fractures, and pilots struggled with erratic handling at high speeds. Another major issue was engine reliability. The original design called for Daimler-Benz DB600 engines, but due to shortages, the aircraft was forced to use Junkers UMO 211 engines instead. While these engines were adequate, they required additional modifications, further delaying the aircraft's production. These problems frustrated German military officials who were eager to get the Ju-88 into service as soon as possible. One of the significant challenges came not from engineering limitations, but from political interference. Adolf Hitler, heavily influenced by the success of the Junkers Ju-87 Stuka dive bomber, insisted that the Ju-88 should also have dive bombing capabilities. This was a near impossible demand for an aircraft that was much larger and faster than the Stuka. To make matters worse, the added dive bombing mechanisms delayed production, forcing Junkers engineers to redesign key components of the aircraft. What was originally meant to be a high-speed bomber now risked becoming an overweight, underperforming machine, one that could neither dive effectively nor maintain the speed advantage that had originally defined it. This insistence on dive bombing nearly derailed the Ju-88 program. However, despite these setbacks, the engineers at Junkers refused to give up. They made critical refinements that would ultimately save the aircraft from failure. The breakthrough came when engineers found a way to reinforce the airframe without compromising speed. They improved the structural integrity of the wings and fuselage, allowing the aircraft to handle high-speed dives at a shallower angle instead of the near-vertical descents used by the Ju-87 Stuka. This compromise allowed the Ju-88 to maintain its versatility without completely sacrificing its original design goals. Another key advancement was the introduction of automatic dive recovery flaps. These were designed to prevent pilots from losing control during dive bombing runs, making the maneuver safer and more practical. This innovation helped the Ju-88 retain its multi-role capability, ensuring that it could still perform dive bombing missions without suffering catastrophic failures. By the time the refined Ju-88 models were ready for combat in 1939, they had become faster, stronger, and more adaptable than ever before. The aircraft had overcome its growing pains, evolving into one of the most feared and flexible warbirds of World War II. The battle, the Ju-88's combat performance and adaptability. Once past its mechanical struggles, the Junkers Ju-88 proved itself as a high-speed bomber, a lethal night fighter, a formidable heavy interceptor, and a reliable reconnaissance aircraft. Whether dodging enemy fighters, hunting Allied bombers, or gathering crucial intelligence, the Ju-88 carved its name into aviation history. The Ju-88 was originally designed under the Schnellbomber concept, prioritizing speed over defensive armament. This design philosophy paid off. Unlike slow-moving, heavily armed bombers that relied on turret gunners for defense, the Ju-88 could outrun many early war fighters. The Ju-88C series evolved from earlier bomber designs, with a C6 model being the most refined. It featured the powerful UMO 211J engines and a sleek all-metal nose housing its forward-firing guns. Primarily used as a fighter-bomber, the C6 was assigned to bomber units. By mid-1942, it took on a critical role in defending German shipping, particularly U-boats in the Battle of Biscay, conducting anti-shipping patrols and escort missions from bases in France. However, as the war progressed, Allied fighters became faster and better armed. The Ju-88's lack of defensive armament became a weakness, forcing the Luftwaffe to adapt the aircraft for new roles. By early 1943, hopes were pinned on this proven design to evolve into a high-performance night fighter that could dominate the skies by the following year. At the time, the most common night fighter versions were the Ju-88C series, essentially bombers modified for combat. A high-speed alternative, the Ju-88R, utilized BMW 801 engines but suffered from control issues at high speeds and excess drag due to its bomber origins. It was clear that a more specialized version was needed. By late 1943, the development of the new Ju-88G1 was complete. The prototype, Ju-88V58, first flew in June 1943, featuring the same BMW 801 engines but with significant improvements. It borrowed the vertical stabilizer from the Ju-188, had a sleeker cockpit for reduced drag, and eliminated the bulky bombardier's gondola. The Ju-88G1's firepower was significantly upgraded, replacing bombing gear with a mid-fuselage gun pod containing 4 20mm MG-151-20 cannons, plus 2 more in the nose, later removed due to visibility issues. The aircraft was also fitted with the SN-2C radar system, making it a formidable night fighter. Production ramped up quickly, with the first units delivered in January 1944. Thanks to shared components with older models, output surged, reaching a peak of 247 aircraft per month by June. Armed with forward-facing cannons and Schräge Musik, or upward-firing guns for surprise attacks on British bombers, the Ju-88G1 proved deadly in night operations. Its BMW 801G2 engines gave it solid speed and exceptional handling, earning praise from both German and post-war Allied pilots, including Britain's Captain Eric Winkle-Brown and Wing Commander Roland Beamont. Building on G1's success, Germany soon developed the Ju-88G6, powered by the Junkers UMO 213A1 engine and featuring factory-standard upgrades that had been field-installed on earlier models. Prototypes tested additional enhancements, further cementing the Ju-88's legacy as a dominant night fighter of World War II. Beyond its bomber hunting prowess, the Ju-88 was also used as an interceptor and heavy fighter. Some models were equipped with powerful forward-firing cannons, including the 37mm and even 75mm cannons, allowing them to take down enemy aircraft and heavily armored bombers. Over occupied Europe, Ju-88 heavy fighters engaged American B-17 Flying Fortresses and B-24 Liberators during daylight raids, delivering devastating blows to bomber formations before withdrawing, though they remained vulnerable to Allied escort fighters like the P-51 Mustang. Meanwhile, on the Eastern Front, Ju-88s served primarily as bombers, striking Soviet positions and infrastructure while night fighter variants intercepted Soviet bombers under the cover of darkness. Despite its firepower, the Ju-88 struggled in direct engagements with single-engine fighters, reinforcing its role as an attacker rather than a true dogfighter. One of the most thrilling moments in Ju-88 history involved a crew on a reconnaissance mission over the English Channel. As they photographed British naval movements, a squadron of RAF Spitfires suddenly appeared on the horizon. With no chance to fight back, the pilot pushed the Ju-88's engines to their limit. The aircraft dove towards the sea, skimming just above the waves to evade the faster Spitfires. Bullets streaked past, hitting the fuselage and wounding the radio operator. Just when it seemed like they were doomed, the Ju-88's superior range and fuel capacity gave it the edge. The Spitfires, running low on fuel, were forced to break off the chase. The battered Ju-88, trailing smoke, limped back to its base in France. Its crew was traumatized, but alive. The Ju-88's legacy. The Ju-88's versatility and combat effectiveness made it one of the most produced aircraft of World War II. With over 15,000 units built, it served in nearly every role imaginable: bomber, night fighter, interceptor, reconnaissance, and even maritime patrol. This massive production run cemented its place as a cornerstone of the Luftwaffe's air strategy, ensuring that Germany could field a fast, adaptable, and heavily armed aircraft across multiple fronts. Despite its impressive capabilities, the Ju-88 faced increasing challenges as the war progressed. By the later years of the conflict, Allied advancements in radar, aircraft technology, and strategic bombing campaigns made survival increasingly difficult for Ju-88 crews. Heavily escorted bomber formations, advanced night fighters like the de Havilland Mosquito, and overwhelming numbers of P-51 Mustangs and Spitfires meant that Ju-88 units had to fight harder just to stay airborne. Many were lost to enemy fire, and by 1944-45, the Luftwaffe struggled to field enough aircraft to counter Allied dominance. Reflection and takeaway. The Ju-88's ability to serve as an ultimate multi-role warbird made it one of the most adaptable aircraft in history. Its speed, firepower, and versatility allowed it to remain relevant throughout the conflict. However, being good at everything meant it wasn't the absolute best at any one role. While it was an engineering triumph, its performance was often limited by Germany's dwindling resources and strategic missteps. If Germany had focused on using it primarily as a long-range fighter or high-speed bomber, rather than diverting resources to excessive modifications, could it have made a bigger impact? Perhaps with better tactics and deployment, the Ju-88 could have played a more decisive role in slowing the Allies' advance. However, with fuel shortages, pilot losses, and overwhelming Allied air superiority, even the Ju-88's versatility wasn't enough to turn the tide of war. The Junkers Ju-88 wasn't just a warplane. It was a testament to innovation, adaptability, and the ever-evolving demands of aerial warfare. From high-speed bombing runs to deadly night fighter missions, it proved that a single aircraft could master multiple roles. But in the end, even its versatility couldn't save it from the overwhelming might of Allied air power. Yet, its influence didn't end with World War II. The Ju-88 set the stage for the multi-role aircraft that dominate modern battlefields today. So was it truly the ultimate warbird of its time? Or was it simply a brilliant design overshadowed by the chaos of war? Thank you for joining us in exploring Germany's ultimate multi-role warbird, the Ju-88. If you enjoy this story, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more fascinating tales of aviation history. And don't forget to check out these other videos for more untold stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.